When You Wish Upon a Star, Chapter 4. The water was the perfect temperature for a dip, but that was quite possibly the last thing on Kiara's mind as she swam. The currents were against her, trying to push her back toward her brother and sister, so she kicked harder, ignoring their shouts and screams. "Kia, come back! Kia!" The water and wind swallowed Nico's and Illy's cries, and soon Kiara was utterly alone. Never before had the world been so silent, yet definitely loud. Water thrashed and roared in her ears, yet amid it all, she could hear her heart thumping in her chest, her breath growing shallower. A cracked piece of wood coasted past her, traveling at alarming speed, and nearly crashed into her head, and Kiara swerved only at the last second. "Go back," her body screamed at her. If she went on, there was a high chance she would get caught in the tides and drowned. "Help!" cried the young man again. "Help!" "There's a chance you'll die," her conscience agreed. "But there's also a chance you might save him. If you give up now, there will be no chance for the boy. Only death." That was all the convincing she needed. She threw aside her fears and pushed even harder. Salt stung her eyes, and seawater choked her throat and burned up in her nose. The pain quickly became unbearable, yet as the water roared in her ears, Kiara had only one thought. Faster. She had to swim faster. "Keep a steady rhythm," she told herself. "Don't panic." But Kiara was only human, and she was nothing compared to the sea. Soon she could feel herself losing against the tides, and for every kick forward, the sea pushed her back 5 strokes. She was losing him. She was losing herself, too. Kiara blinked, struggling against the seawater, brutally flushing her eyes. They instinctively closed, leaving her in the dark. Her legs at last kept kicking. But her muscles were on fire, and her strength was near the end of its reserves. "Over there," came a voice in her ear. It wasn't hers. It was a woman's voice that she didn't recognize. "Just a little more. You can do this, Kiara Belmaggio. Keep fighting." The voice sounded like a friend. Kiara trusted it, and its intensity gave her the strength to force her eyes open. Sunlight painted her world white before granting her sight again. Another blink and she saw him. The young man who had shouted for help. He looked unconscious, and his arms were wrapped precariously over a floating log. With all that she had left, Kiara swam until she reached him. He was from her village, that she knew right away. The luthier's son. Not someone she often saw in the town square, but were she not half drowned, his name would have come to her immediately. She struggled to keep his head above the water. His mustache was soaked, and his skin was so cold she couldn't tell whether he was alive. "Stay with me," she said hoarsely. "You're going to be all right." It felt like a lie, even though she didn't mean it as one. What now? She thought desperately. She couldn't swim him all the way to Nicolo's boat, even if she wanted to try. She couldn't see it. She knew her brother and sister were looking for her, and she couldn't risk swimming in the wrong direction. And there was no way for her to try to revive him while they floated in the sea, one fierce wave away from death. The seconds ticked, each an era. Now that she wasn't swimming, the water felt colder than it had earlier. Kiara's teeth chattered uncontrollably. She was hot and cold at the same time, her muscles weeping as she cycled her legs to stay afloat. "Focus," she told herself, as she bobbed up and out of the water shouting for help. She might have cried when she spied Nicolo and Ilaria. Even her sister was rowing, for the first time in her life. A fact made obvious when, in the excitement of fighting Kiara, she stopped and accidentally dropped the oar in the sea. "Take him first," Kia said, pushing the luthier's son into Nicolo's arms. She waited until he was safely aboard before accepting Ilaria's outstretched arms. "Don't you ever do that again," Illy cried, hugging her fiercely. "I thought you died." "Careful," Kia tried to tease, but her voice came out as a series of hacking coughs. You might get your favorite dress wet." "At least you'll be alive to help me wash it." Kiara would have laughed if she could, but she was exhausted. She let her head fall back against the boat, hardly able to move. She was still shuddering, and her teeth still clattered violently. "Drink some water," urged Illy. "Here, take my—" "Give to him," Kiara rasped, pointing at the luthier's son. Nicolo was pumping the young man's chest in vain. Ilaria twisted. She'd forgotten the half-drowned young man. "He's not even awake. Nico's helping him. I want to be with you. Kiara choked. Illy. All right, all right. Ilaria angled back toward the luthier's son and took his chin, sweeping aside his mustache. Hey, don't die on my watch, all right? I'll never hear the end of it from Nico and Kia. As she dribbled fresh water through his lips, the young man's eyes fluttered. My word, he murmured, half-consciously. A fairy! The most beautiful fairy I've ever seen in my life. Ilaria giggled at Kia. I like this one. Even half dead, he knows beauty when he sees it. Consciousness returned to the young man, and his eyes went round. Oh my! He cried, springing upright. His body was a step behind his mind and wasn't quite ready to rise yet, resulting in his breaking into a fit of coughs. As he spluttered, seawater dribbled from his sleeves and splashed into Illy's skirt. Watch it, Illy moaned, holding up the outer layer of her skirt against the sun. It's all wrinkled. Nicolo yanked Ilaria behind him and caught the young luthier before he teetered off the boat. Easy, easy, he said. Breathe in, out. Here, have some water, more water, Kiara offered. She crawled to the young man's side, covering his hand with hers. Thank heavens it was a warm day. Already some color was returning to his cheeks. Thank you, he said, catching his breath. Thank you. You're old Mr. Tommaso's son, said Nicolo at last. Geppetto. Yes, I am, said Geppetto, dazed. And you are? He squinted in Nico's direction, and his fingers went to his nose, where his missing spectacles left 2 reddish imprints. He scrabbled about the boat, searching, and explained, I can't see much without my glasses. I must have lost them. I would bet you have lost them, said Nicolo, laughing. You nearly drowned. But better that we fished you out and not your glasses, wouldn't you say? Nicolo Belmaggio? Geppetto cried, recognizing him at last. I thought it was you getting into your boat earlier. It's a good thing you saw me. I'm indebted to you. Thank my sister, not me. Kia's the one who saved you. Dipping his head, Geppetto turned to her and practically bowed at her feet. Thank you, Kiara. If not for you, well... Call me Kia, she said. All my friends do. Kia, repeated Geppetto. Just then the boat tilted over a rough current, and Geppetto stumbled over a trawl net. As he struggled to regain his balance, he grabbed Ilaria's arm, then immediately recoiled. Awful sorry, Miss Ilaria. Geppetto reached for an imaginary hat on his head before remembering he didn't have one. He repeated, Awful sorry. Sorry won't make my dress dry, Ilaria lamented. We save a fellow, and all you care about is how wrinkled your dress gets. Nicolo clucked his tongue at his youngest sister. To think, Geppetto thought you were a fairy. He must really not be able to see without his glasses. Hush, you, Ilaria slapped Nicolo's arm. He said I'm a fairy because he thought I was pretty. She leaned closer to Geppetto and batted her lashes. Don't you? Well, I... Geppetto averted his eyes to the bottom of the boat. Yes, Miss Ilaria. See? Ilaria tilted her head triumphantly. Though, come to think of it, we never got around to introducing my name. It was true, and Kiara hid a smile. Young Geppetto's face had gone from being seasick pale to tomato red. There came a tender ping in Kia's heart. He likes her, she realized. That ping in her heart turned into a warm buzz. She was familiar with the feeling, even though she couldn't pin down what it was. But when she listened it, often good things happened. Like saving Geppetto. And right now it was telling her that the young man and Ilaria would be wonderful for each other. I agree, Kiara thought. On the other hand, Ilaria had lived her whole life in Pariva and probably had never known Geppetto existed before today. I'll have to help change that. Pariva is a small town, said Kia helpfully. It's really Illy who should be thanking Geppetto. If she hadn't asked for us to come today, we wouldn't have found you. Thank you, truly, said Geppetto to Ilaria. And I'm sorry about the dress. I was going to wear it to my audition in Nerio, Ilaria said coyly. She crossed her arms, pretending to be displeased. Now it'll have to be pressed again. Niccolo rolled his eyes. If you knew you needed that dress for an audition, why would you wear it to the sea in the first place? Are you accusing me of lying? It wouldn't be anything new. Why, you, Illy, Keo interrupted. I'll help you press your dress before your audition. It'll look as good as new. With a harumph directed to Niccolo, Ilaria sat beside her sister. I hope so. I'm terribly sorry, said Geppetto again, looking more distressed about Illy's dress than he had been about nearly drowning. If I could afford it, I would offer to buy a new one. Miss Ilaria, you have such a beautiful voice. I would never forgive myself if I hampered your efforts toward becoming the most famous prima donna in Asperia, Ilaria finished for him. She leaned forward with interest. You've heard me sing before? A few times last summer, he confessed. Miss Rocco's house is next door to my father's workshop, Illy gasped. You eavesdropped on my singing lessons? I couldn't help it, Geppetto said bashfully. I like opera. You do? That made Ilaria's face light up, and she stuck out her tongue at Niccolo. See, someone here likes opera. Niccolo rolled his eyes and resumed rowing. Hastily, Geppetto picked up a spare oar to help. As he cut into the water, he asked Ilaria, Will you sing again this summer? Unlikely, she replied, evening out the folds in her dress before she placed her hands primly on her lap and crossed her ankles. Mamma said it isn't ladylike to sing out in public, and ever since that tavern opened, she thinks it's less safe. I hadn't thought about that. That's enough, Illy, said Niccolo between breaths. You can seize the conversation later. We haven't asked what happened to this poor fellow. No, it's all right, Geppetto insisted. But Niccolo went on. How did you end up capsizing your boat? Geppetto inhaled. I don't even know what happened. I was looking at seals when it wasn't a seal. It was a monster, whale, said Niccolo. Monstro. Monstro? Geppetto repeated, confused. What's that? You haven't heard the stories? Niccolo sighed. Oh, Geppetto, you really need to get out of your father's workshop more, and not just to listen to my sister sing. Impressive how quickly Geppetto's face turned red again. Chiara supposed it was good for his circulation. With a smile, she passed him one of the sandwiches she had packed, while Geppetto and Ilaria defended the importance of listening to opera, and her brother resumed rowing them all back to Pareva. Everything was well, and as the new friends sailed back toward Pareva, no one noticed the sinister clouds of magic that oozed out of the distant sea.